Ever feel like you're just like drowning in to-dos? You know, with that one, big task just hanging over your head.
Oh, tell me about it.
It's like that feeling of, ugh, if I could just conquer that thing. So listeners, if you've ever felt that way, you are not alone. Today we are diving into Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog
Oh, I like this one.
to figure out, like, how do we actually conquer that feeling and get things done?
Yeah. And it's such a powerful metaphor, right? Like you open your to-do list and it's boom, that frog is staring back at you. It's the most important thing, sure, but it's also usually the thing you just want to shove under the rug.
Oh, it totally resonated with me
Yeah.
because I am queen procrastinator.
Oh, yeah.
Like, give me anything else to do, beat me to tea, that one thing. But Tracy's point is, and this I get, if you can tackle that frog first thing,
Yeah.
you actually set the tone for the whole day.
It's all about the energy. You got to like harness those peak productivity moments and align them with what actually matters. And what I appreciate is that Tracy doesn't just leave us hanging with a work harder message. He gives us a structure.
Yes, he gives us a framework.
Yeah.
And he starts, which I love, with clarity.
Yeah.
Like, before we even get to we have to figure out why.
Yeah.
He actually says, we should ask ourselves, why am I on the payroll? Which is such a, like, jarring question.
It is.
It kind of, like, wakes you up a bit. Why am I on the payroll? And then he says, what are the 5 to 7 key why things my job hinges on? So we're not talking about, the minutia here. It's like laser focus.
It's like strapping on a compass before you even take a step, right?
Yeah.
You got to know which direction is actually going to get you where you want to go. So by defining those core responsibilities, or as Tracy calls them, key result areas, you can then pinpoint, okay, these are the Frog Ruby tasks.
And it's so true, because otherwise everything feels like a frog.
Yes.
And then you get decision fatigue.
Yeah.
And he doesn't stop there. He goes on and introduces this ABCDE method to really help us prioritize those tasks. Have you used this?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is one of the things. I use it quite a bit because it forces you to look at that to-do list, right? But instead of just being a jumble, you assign a letter to each item.
Oh, I like this.
A through E, A being, oh, that's a big ugly frog, and E being pretty much, whatever.
Got it. Okay.
So you can visually prioritize.
Okay, so let's say, hypothetically, I have to, on my to-do list, write a report, prepare a presentation, answer emails, and organize my desk. Where do those fall on the ABCDE spectrum?
Okay, well, let's see. That report, I'm guessing that's probably your A task.
Yeah, it's time sensitive, it's going to have a big impact, and it's, frankly, what's causing me the most anxiety.
Exactly. And that presentation, that might be a B. Important, but not, DEFCON 1.
Okay, and what about email? Because email always feels urgent.
Oh, it's so deceptive, isn't it? Because while some emails need your attention right away, a lot of them are really C's or even D's in disguise. And it's tempting because answering them feels productive, but they can be major distractions from your real frogs.
They really can. Okay, and then organizing my desk, that's got to be an E, right?
Classic E, something you could delegate, put off, or maybe even realize, you know what, I don't even need to do this at all.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of this method. It gives you a visual, it forces you to prioritize, and it makes sure that you're not just busy, but you're strategically productive with your time and energy. You're working on the things that actually move the needle. So we've got these frogs, right? We've used our ABCDE method. We've got them all laid out. But then there's that moment where you actually have to, do the thing.
Ugh, yes, the actual eating part of Eat That Frog.
Exactly. And that's where I think Tracy really shines because he gives us some really tactical advice for dealing with those big, overwhelming tasks.
Yes. And one of my favorite takeaways was this idea of salami slicing. Have you ever just felt so intimidated by a task that you basically just avoid it?
Oh, 100%. It's that classic, how do you eat an elephant? But in this case, a frog.
Yes. And it feels impossible, so you do nothing. And that's where this salami slicing, it's so simple, but so smart.
Yeah.
Instead of viewing it as this giant, insurmountable thing,
Right.
you break it down into these smaller, bite-sized pieces. Literally.
Like, imagine you have to write a huge research paper. You're not going to just, stare at a blank screen and magically produce the whole thing. You start with an outline. Maybe then you focus on researching one section at a time.
Right. You give yourself those little wins along the way.
Yes. It makes it feel so much more manageable. And you
Right.
get that little boost of accomplishment with each slice you finish.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, but I will say, there's still some tasks where even starting a slice feels impossible.
Oh, I know that feeling.
And Tracy had this other technique, and I'll be honest, the name made me laugh, but it's Swiss cheesing.
Ah, yeah.
Okay, explain this one because it sounds both delicious and very messy.
Okay, so let's say you've got that A task on your list, right? You know it's important, but you are dreading it. Swiss cheesing is basically giving yourself permission to just spend 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes,
Okay.
just making a small dent in it, just poking a few
I
holes.
like it already
Yeah.
because even 5 minutes feels doable on a bad day.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, often once you overcome that initial inertia, you're much more likely to keep going.
It's like tricking your brain into being productive.
A little bit. Okay, but even with all the best techniques, sometimes it's not even about the task itself, it's about the environment we're trying to do it in.
Oh, 100%. We've talked about prioritizing, but what about actually creating the space to get things done?
Yes. And this is where Tracy's big on designing your workspace for flow. And honestly, it's something I've been thinking about a lot too. He's not a fan of multitasking.
Yeah, he does not mince words about that.
No. He's like, every time you get distracted, every email notification, every phone call, it forces your brain to switch gears, and that tanks your focus.
Oh, it's so true. I will be like in the middle of writing something and then
Yeah.
ding, I check my phone
Mm-hmm.
and I tell myself it's just a quick glance.
Right.
But then boom, my entire train of thought is derailed.
Gone. And Tracy, I love this. He gives us some tough love. Turn off notifications, silence your phone, maybe even get one of those website blockers. Like, go hardcore.
It does sound extreme, but honestly, creating those boundaries, it's like giving ourselves the gift of focus, which is so rare these days.
It's true. You have to be really intentional about it. So
Yeah.
it's about reclaiming control of your attention, designing that space, and then when you combine that with a next point, this is where things get, I think, even more powerful.
Ooh, okay, you got to elaborate. What's this next level productivity hack?
It's about mastering your craft, like
Yeah.
really becoming exceptional at the things that matter most to you.
So it's not just about time management, it's about investing in your own skill set.
Yes, and this really resonated with me because Tracy's argument is the better you become at something, the more enjoyable it becomes to do. And when you enjoy it, you're going to make time for it.
That makes so much sense. It goes back to that frog, right? If you enjoy it, it's less of a chore and more of a welcome challenge.
Exactly. And he takes it a step further. He says, think back on your past experiences, those moments when you were just completely in the zone, totally absorbed in what you were doing.
I love that. It's like we all have those clues within our own experiences.
Yes. And by analyzing those moments, you can start to see patterns. You can pinpoint your natural talents and interests. And when you start aligning your work with those things,
That's when the magic happens.
exactly, that's when you hit that flow state, that effortless productivity that Tracy talks about. You're in your sweet spot.
I love that. Okay, so we're designing our environment. We're getting really good at what we do, but then Tracy throws us a curveball, right?
He does. He throws in this concept that I think can be really surprising, maybe even a little counterintuitive.
Counterintuitive. Okay, now I have to know. What's this surprising productivity advice?
It's all about procrastination.
Wait, really? I thought that was what we were fighting against.
Well, there's procrastination and then there's creative procrastination.
Okay, I'll bite.
Yeah.
How do you procrastinate creatively?
It's about being deliberate. Right. So instead of letting procrastination just happen to you, which we've all been there,
Oh, yeah.
you're choosing it. You're saying, you know what? This thing on my list, it's getting pushed. Remember that ABCDE method?
Yes, prioritizing.
Right. This is like peak prioritizing. You're giving yourself permission to put off those C's, D's, and E's, especially if they're sucking up time from your A tasks,
Mm.
from your frogs.
So it's not about being lazy. It's almost like being strategic with your energy, saying no to the things that aren't that important.
Exactly. And this ties into something I really took from the book, which is all of this hinges on knowing your values. What are you actually trying to create with your work and life? Because it's not just about being productive, it's about being fulfilled too, right?
It's not enough to just eat any old frog. It has to be the right frog.
Exactly. The one
Yeah.
that's actually taking you somewhere you want to go. And when that happens, that's when you tap into a whole other level of energy, I think.
It's like Tracy says, goals are important, but your values, those are what give you the fire to actually go after them. He really wants us to think about the why behind everything we do, not just the what.
Yeah, because when you're connected to a sense of purpose, suddenly those to-dos, they aren't just boxes to check, they're stepping stones to something bigger. Which brings us back to your initial question about the counterintuitive stuff. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is actually not do something.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. Maybe you delegate it, maybe you just let it go completely, but if it's not truly serving your bigger goals, It's gotta go.
It's about making conscious choices about where we're spending our energy, even if it goes against that whole hustle harder mentality that's so popular.
Oh, 100%. Because real productivity isn't about just checking boxes. It's about making real, meaningful progress on the stuff that actually matters.
This has been so insightful. So for our listeners who are feeling ready to tackle their to-do list, to really eat that frog, what's one thing you hope they take away from this?
Don't be afraid to question everything you think you know about productivity. It's not about doing more, it's about doing the right things. It's about priorities, it's about focus, but most of all, it's about making sure your work is actually aligned with your values.
That is so well said. So listeners, what is your frog today? That's that one task that's been looming. Identify it, break it down, and take a bite. And remember, you don't have to do it all at once. Even a little bit of progress is still progress. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Eat That Frog. Until next time. Happy frog eating, everyone.